I'm going to start swearing too.
Oh, I'll keep it cool. Oh, I won't swear.
This is not a monetized show, Tom,
Oh,
but we are officially live. It is Monday, Mapping and Movie Madness with Jack Cull and Tom. Tom, am I pronouncing this correctly? Knauss?
no, it's Knauss.
Knauss. I should have gone
Yeah.
with Knauss. That was going to be my second
Yeah.
guess. Knauss. So it's actually a little bit of a hard
The
K.
phonetic version, and you're cool.
Yeah, you know, I always do phonetic, like, to a fault, seriously. And it actually really hinders me on almost everything. So I second guess myself and then start not doing phonetic, and look, it just shot me in the foot all over again. Gallant Knight Games, welcome, Gallant Knight. We're going to have you on the show. Pex will be reaching out to you for sure. But we are here with Tom Knauss. Tom is a freelance writer. Tom, give us your background, my friend, so everyone knows you've got a lot of works behind you.
Yeah, I started in like 2000. I started in the industry, so I started when third edition started, and they had the open game license, and everyone was like soliciting people to write stuff. And I'm like, I had been gaming for years. I'm like, all right, maybe I'm good enough to do this. And I started submitting stuff, and to much to my shock, people were accepting it. And they were saying, "Can you do more?" I'm like, "Yeah, I can do more." So, I, I worked for a bunch of the fledgling RPG companies back in 2000, and then I stuck with a few. I stuck with Bastion Press for a while. I did their Oathbound campaign setting. I took it over when the original designer had left, and then when 4E came out, I kind of like backtracked a little bit. I'm like, I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know. There's no license. Yada yada yada. So I was out of the game for a little while. Then I reached out to one of my friends, Tim Hitchcock, who you will see if you've watched a while. Things came full circle, and I said, "What do you can you get me anything?" And he says, "Oh, I can get you this project called Razor Coast for Frog God Games." And I did it, and they liked me, and I stuck around ever since. So that's it in a nutshell.
Nice.
Nice. You've got a lot of titles too to your name now. I was looking through your repertoire earlier on. I was like, okay, this guy's been pretty prolific.
Yeah, I think Casey Christopherson and I always have a contest to see who wrote more words. He thinks
Nice.
he thinks he has me beat, but I think I have him beat. One day we'll actually total it up and figure out who's the winner of this contest. But I'm going to guesstimate that we both have probably around 3 to 4 million words published.
That's insane. That's insane. It's a particular piece or multiple pieces that you're really happy with.
You know what? There's nothing I'm unhappy with. Obviously, there's some that I think are better than others. So, I would say the ones that stand out are, for me, were Wildwood from Bastion Press. Uh, all of the Perilous Vistas books that I did for Frog God, I really enjoyed. And this new one that we just did, to Wall, is definitely my favorite because it was the one thing that I had like total, absolute control over, much to the chagrin of others. But I was given free reign to do whatever I want, and I kind of did that. So good for me. Created a lot of work for other people, but it was fun and it's a blast. And I think everyone, when they get it, is going to be really delighted. I mean, I think we did an amazing job on this book, so I'm ecstatic about it.
That's cool. That's really cool. So, the movie thing for everyone that doesn't know, Jack, who was with us as well, um, Jack has a huge passion for movies, and Jack posts almost. I want to say almost daily on Facebook about movies he's watched, rating movies, and every single time I see Jack post, Tom's there. Tom, what's the source of the movie interest?
You know, I wasn't a giant movie buff until maybe about 10 years ago. And then I kind of decided, you know what, there's so many movies out there I haven't seen. I really need to see them. So I took the IMDb list, the top 250, and I took the best pictures, and I decided I'm going to watch as many of these as I possibly can. So that's what I did over the course of the next several years. If a foreign film came up, I watched it. If there was an old Academy Award winner that came up, I watched it. If there were nominees, I watched it. So I really tried to, get into it, and I found so many incredible movies that I never heard of, or that dated back to the 50s that were black and white, and I wasn't really that familiar with. And as you saw one, you saw others, and you're like, okay, this is a lot like da 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 because I just saw it. Or you see foreign films, and you say, wait a second, that's the plot for this American movie that just came out. They just stole that. So when you saw, like, a perfect example is Yojimbo. If you see Yojimbo and you watch Fistful of Dollars, it's the same movie.
Right.
Except it's gunfighters instead of samurais. That's the only difference. If there's another difference, I don't know it. But
and then a few years down the line, Last Man Standing with Bruce Willis is kind of like a mobster version that's basically the same thing as well. It's like let's remake Yojimbo again, or let's remake them.
Yeah, unfortunately, some of the remakes don't come out as good. Like one of my guilty pleasure movies is Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and the one with Colin Farrell is just dreadful.
No, it is, and I wanted to like that one too.
Oh, it's so bad. Oh my god.
Yeah.
You lost like the silliness and the campiness of the first one and made it like totally like, going for CGI and special effects, and it was supposed to be kind of goofy.
Right.
And you kind of lost it.
That's actually one of the funny things that I used to always, rally against remakes, because of that, because originals sometimes are classics, or sometimes, you're afraid they're going to lose the magic. I kind of have, quote unquote, gotten over that in recent years, because I'm like, you know what? It doesn't matter if this remake, I'll always have the original, I'll always be able to access the original. It's not like the original's going away. And if people like the remake, and never seen the original, you can be like, oh, you like this one? Cool. How about let me introduce you to the one that it's based off of. Or if they didn't like the new one, you could be like, aha, so you didn't like the remake, let me show you the original, maybe you'll like that one more. And and it's kind of one of those things. I think my biggest problem now is when they do remakes of a film that's like, it just came out, like especially with foreign films, they do that a lot, like Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and then a few years later they're like, let's do an American remake, and I'm like, it just came out. It's it's still fresh in everybody's mind. What are you talking about? Sure, it's a foreign film, but come on. I think those are the ones I have the biggest problem with, I think, these days.
Yeah, I think they did that with Let Me In, the finisher, the Swedish vampire movie.
Yeah.
They made a American remake, like within a few years after it came out.
Yeah.
And then they made that just dreadful remake of Old Boy, the Korean movie. That is just absolutely horrible.
Yeah, the Spike Lee for some reason was really determined to do that. And it was kind of like, and not only that, but it just exactly. I agree. It was like, why? And not only that, you're not even going to do a good job of remaking it. It's like, oh, come on now.
Yeah, we lost us on that one. But
and you bringing up Total Recall actually, brings up a good point. There's some movies that are fun, that are great, but they are somewhat dated, and it's like, this could be a good remake. Like with today's technology, or like how people write films now and different filming techniques, and with whatever we have, like Total Recall is one where it's like the original is great, and the potential for a remake was there. It was like, we could make this even cooler, we could make this even more fun, even more what have you. And sometimes they just super drop the ball, and it's like, oh man, I hate to see it when it happens. But hello, Princess Strega in the chat.
Princess is here. We've got Brian McWhirter too is here. Brian, hello. Brian, we have to get you on the show as well at some point. We are talking with Tom Knauss.
I don't know. Do you have a pack of like the funky tasting ones?
No, I don't. I don't have any of those. Another one that just came to mind too, and it just slipped out of my mind, was another remake. Oh, I know what it was. Three Musketeers. I saw the 2011 version of it.
Yeah, wowzers.
Whoa! Oh my gosh, was that awful?
and that one was, I think it was at the point there's like an auto fire cannon on a flying ship at some point. It was like,
oh god, I remember that. I was like, have I seen this? And it was so bad. Yes.
It was just awful. It was painful. I was like, oh my god, who thought this was a good idea? Yeah. I mean, it looks, the concept is cool, but just the execution was just Ooh.
So then, which since there have been countless versions of the Three Musketeers and their various tales, for you, what is the one that like you feel was like the good one?
You know, I hate to say it, I like the Disney one from '93.
Okay.
Charlie Sheen and Kiefer Sutherland
And Chris O'Donnell.
Yes. Yeah.
And Oliver Platt as Porthos, which was such a weird casting choice.
Yeah.
Okay.
It kind of worked. I thought it kind of worked.
Yeah.
You know, and with Tim Curry as Cardinal Richelieu.
Right.
You know, I thought it worked. Yeah, was it a little kiddie? Yeah, it was a little kiddie, but I thought it was pretty good.
Nice.
Overall, it's still watchable.
Who plays Rochefort in that one? Who plays Rochefort in the Disney one?
He's the same guy. I don't know the actor's name. I think it's something like Jean Leclerc. He played Sheriff Rottingham's cousin in the Prince of Thieves Robin Hood movie from from Kevin Costner.
Yeah. Okay, as soon as you said that, I can now see his face. Gotcha. Yeah. Oh, so the older ones, the Oliver Reed, Michael York ones, you weren't a big fan of?
They're good. I mean, they're okay. They're just kind of a little dated.
Yeah. I think I like them so much because of the nostalgia factor. You know, those were ones that I saw, you know, when I was a lot younger. And my dad, who was really big, he was the one who got me into like D&D when I was younger. You know, he got me into, he had these on the bookshelf, these big books that had plates of armor and weapons and medieval warfare and castle breakdowns and all. And as I'm younger, he's like, let me show you these books. I mean, let me show you these movies based on these books. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. So I think that's for me why I hold it in such high regard, because I saw it when I was a kid and I was just like, these are great. I love these movies. I bet you if I watched them today, I'd be like, wow, these are kind of cheesy and kind of slow. Yeah.
To some extent.
Yeah. Nice.
So let me throw a grenade out there, Jack.
Oh, what do we got?
Star Wars, Star Trek.
All right. Well, for me, that's the easy one. I mean, I'm okay. Wait. So there's the two answers. There's the why not both, but then there's the gun to my head. If you have to pick one, for me, it's Star Wars with all of the problems it has with its prequels, with its sequels, with all of the animated stuff and everything. For as bad as they can be, they still wins out. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on it.
Yeah, for me, the Star Trek movies are very uneven. Mm-hmm. They almost seem to be like every other one is good, and the one in between gets progressively worse. That's actually
a pretty good point, because if you think about it, the first one, Star Trek Motion Picture, especially coming from the original series, it kind of was. I don't know. I didn't see it when it first came out, so I don't know what the audience reaction was at the time. But I had a lot of people that were kind of like, compared to the show, it was really slow and it was kind of plodding and it wasn't, it didn't have that almost like that what we got from the show, that Star Trek feel to it. But then immediately followed by Wrath of God, which so many people consider to be the best Star Trek film ever. So yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even think of it. It seems to have this jump, for good, bad.
Yeah, and it even carried over into when they did the Next Generation movies.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Actually, yeah. What is it? First Contact.
First Contact is really good, and then Insurrection is.
it's kind of cringeworthy. And then I think
not great.
Then was it Nemesis after that?
Nemesis is actually. Nemesis to me feels like a Starfleet Battles game that was just filmed.
That's actually a good point.
That's pretty much what it is. It's just someone said, you know what, Starfleet Battles is a cool game. Yeah. Let's just make a movie in it. We'll just throw Star Trek characters in it and just make them work around it.
This is how we introduce the new ship for the Romulans. We'll be with the movie tie-in, and we'll introduce it into the game, and it'll be great.
Yeah, that's pretty much what they did.
With the new captain, we could say he's the Romulan clone of Jean-Luc Picard. We'll introduce this new character, and it'll be awesome. Yeah, totally. Right. That was actually the first film I think I ever saw Tom Hardy in, to tell you the truth.
Which character was he?
He was the young clone of Picard.
Oh, he was Shinzon.
Yeah, there you go. I couldn't pull his name. I was like, I don't know.
That's Shinzon.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I'm actually going to look up his filmography. That might have been one of the first things he actually did. Yeah, actually, he did. He was one of the many in the ensemble of Black Hawk Down. Then he was in a film I've never heard of called Deserter. Doesn't even have a wiki page. And then Star Trek Nemesis.
Oh wow, that's a pretty big jump going from basically being I don't want to say an extra, but one of the cavalcade of stars in Black Hawk Down to being in pretty much, I don't want to say a starring role, but a major role in a Star Trek movie.
Yeah, I mean, primary antagonist in the Star Trek movie that's a great honor, I would say.
That's right up there with Ricardo Montalban and
yeah.
And 4 was really not anybody. 4 was
the
whales.
I was gonna say it's that big cosmic entity thing, or celestial. Cosmic. I wasn't gonna say celestial entity, but no, it's like a big space cloud that's angry.
Right.
And then and I didn't. Now, okay, so then for you, what do you? I mean, which of the Star Trek eras is your favorite? Both, combination TV show and movie, whatever.
The original series still has its nostalgia.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, still go back and you still like Kirk, and Spock, and McCoy, and their interactions. Now, the problem with the original series, in my mind, is it's so uneven. The 3rd season's just got so many either mediocre or just bad episodes that are just terrible. Because you could see that, they weren't sure if they're going to continue the show. The writing was kind of like haphazard. They just basically retreaded some plots from the 1st season and the 2nd season. So in terms of overall, I think that the Next Generation was the best one.
Okay.
I do like Deep Space Nine a lot. It was so serialized that if you missed a couple episodes and you tried to jump back in, you were completely lost. Because
gotcha.
There was like a whole, series of you could jump into a Star Trek Next Generation series show and catch it, mid-season, and it's probably not going to be any continuity issues. Whereas in Deep Space Nine, if you jumped into it mid-season and they start talking about things that happened before, you're like, I have no idea what they're talking about, or who this person is, or why they're important, or anything like that. So they're not as self-contained as the Next Generations were.
Yeah, and with Next Generation, it was, unless you were clearly watching something that in the title had part 2, it was pretty much going to be a standalone, just one of the, adventure week style. This was this week's adventure on their journey through space, patrol through space, what have you.
Their 5-year mission.
Their 5-year mission, exactly. It's funny. I actually could never get into Deep Space Nine, not necessarily from the being able to watch it, because I never watched it live. It was I through a great portion of my life I actually didn't have a television of any kind. So there's so many shows that I've missed and that I've had to go back and watch retroly, including things like Next Generation. Where I'm watching them all on Netflix or what have you, but it was one of those things with Deep Space Nine. I remember when I tried watching it, I had actually just come fresh off of watching Babylon 5, like the entire series of Babylon 5, and I started watching Deep Space Nine, and I was like, this is just Babylon 5 and the Star Trek universe. I was like, I don't think I like this very much, and so I couldn't really get into it, because I was kind of like, this kind of feels like a weird ripoff. I don't know, so. I never ended up watching it simply because of that. Probably one of those things where I should probably try to give it a try now that it's been a few years. Now, what about the other ones like Voyager or Enterprise or even the new stuff? Have you watched any of that?
I have not. I'm have enough streaming services that I don't feel like signing up for another one.
Right.
And so I haven't seen the new one. I've heard mixed things. Some of my friends like it, some of them don't, or just kind of it's okay.
Gotcha.
Voyager, I didn't really get into Voyager for a variety of reasons. Nothing really show related, more just time commitments, and I just didn't have the energy to do it. And I gave Enterprise a shot, and I kind of found it, I wasn't that enthralled with it. It was just, it was okay.
Gotcha. A couple of people in the chat saying Nathan D.J. Craig says that they're in for DS9. Strega says that she was really into Voyager. I did watch Voyager, and I actually liked it quite a bit. Brian McWhirter says Lower Decks, that's the animated one, is really good.
That's what I've heard too. Yeah.
Brian McWhorter, also saying that he couldn't get into Deep Space Nine. And then Strega kind of agrees. And I'm in the same boat as you. Next Generation having being the quote unquote best one, at least for me. And Princess Strega saying that she the Next Generation had the biggest impact on her. She had and continue to have dreams about being part of that Next Generation crew. That's cool.
Oh, that's cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah. The only thing I would like to do would be to be a patron at Quark's Bar in Deep Space Nine.
There you
seemed
go.
like the place to be.
Totally.
I think he made the series. I don't want to say he made the series, but for me, he was the most compelling character on the series. Was Quark.
Right. I always thought it was funny too that he was Armin was I always want to say he basically played Quark when the Ferengi were first introduced in Next Generation, but I think his character was like Ferengi number 2 or something. Like I don't think he actually had a name, but it's one of those things where he's been playing the Ferengi since there've been Ferengi. So it's like I'm sitting there like going like he's got to be the same character. Like that's just him. He encountered the Enterprise crew before he hit Deep Space Nine. It's got to be the same character. In my head canon, it's the same character like the whole time. So
I like that. I like it.
Oh, Strega says she actually met Armin Shimerman at TrekCon and got his autograph. That's cool.
Oh wow, nice, very nice. I met I'm trying to think which of the Star Trek characters actors. I've met Walter Koenig.
Nice.
I've met James Doohan.
Nice.
I actually have an autographed picture from Leonard Nimoy, but I did not actually meet him.
Oh, okay, I was gonna say, I was like, ooh.
Yeah, no. It's actually someone told me I have to get this done. It's a picture of he and William Shatner on the set of Star Trek V.
Okay.
That's awful Final Frontier. But they said, I need to get William Shatner to sign it, so I have both of their signatures on this picture.
That would be cool.
Yeah, that would be good. But William's getting up there. He's got to be, I'm guessing, 90.
Yeah. I think he just had his 90th birthday a couple weeks ago. No, literally a week ago today on the 22nd. He just turned 90.
Okay.
Wowzers.
And I don't think he's going to be doing the con circuit anytime soon.
Right.
So,
Right. Exactly.
It's going to be tough. But
let's see. Gallant Knight says that season 2 of Star Trek Discovery, so that latest one, is some of the best Star Trek ever put on air. Ooh, wow.
Wow.
That's bold.
I was about to say bold. You beat me to it.
Nice. So, Alyssa, what are your thoughts on Star Trek?
Yeah,
Sorry,
you guys
just
show all of a sudden. You just
Yeah,
I'm just sitting over here. I'm adding additional settlements to the Salt Wolves of the Whale Road. So I'm happy to let you guys chat. Honestly, I mean, I watched the Next Generation, obviously. I enjoyed it. Deep Space Nine, I tend to agree with Tom. I watched it, I enjoyed it, but if I stopped for a certain while, I couldn't get back into it. And I didn't realize that until Tom sort of explained his opinion. I was like, yeah, I think that's why I never quite got back into it, because I skipped a few weeks or something, and I just fell out. But the more recent stuff, I haven't watched any of it, so I can't even express an opinion. I would love to watch the Picard thing now. I'd love to check it out, but only because I love him. He's awesome.
So let's go back to movies a bit. In your opinion, what's the worst Best Picture, and what's the Best Picture for the Academy Awards?
Oh, of actual Best Pictures.
Actual Best Picture winners. What's the worst and what's the best?
I'm going to pull up a list because I'm one of those people that can't pull up. I can't pull up just. Sadly, I cannot pull up knowledge like that from my head, especially when it's like, what year did that come out? What year did that win Best Picture? I'd be like, I don't know. You know what? There was one that when it first came out, I enjoyed it, but I had a very narrow-minded view of the world and of experiences that people have, people of color have, and women have, and other people, unlike myself, have in the world. And there was a Best Picture winner that I, at the time, enjoyed, but since then I have listened and have read many a commentary on the film since then that opened up my eyes to about it. And since then I have gone, I think I agree. I don't think that should have won Best Picture. And that is 2000s. It was Crash. Thank you. Yes. So I think that one for me is one. At the time when I saw it, I was like, oh, that's a great movie. And now I'm like, I don't think that's a great movie.
Can you explain why that fell out of favor for you? Because, okay, I'm not a huge moviegoer like you two guys. And I'm going to assume that some people in the channel aren't either. And I liked Crash. Now tell me why I shouldn't.
Well, of all people too. Oh, hey, real quick before we continue on that, Dave Holland Art rating you with 6 people.
Dave Holland. Hey, Dave Holland. Dave, it's been a while, my friend. Let me just quickly show you guys what I'm doing. This is for Gallant Knight Games. It is Salt Walls of the Whale Road. It is a Viking map set in around 950 AD, as if a Christian monk had drawn it for, I'm going to say, his Viking captors. And so it's Norse themed. I've been working on the frame. Here we go. I've been working on this frame because I had this concept in my head, and I wanted to see if it was going to work out, and I think it is. And so I'm going to continue with the frame at a later point. But in the meantime, I hadn't been drawing the interior, so I'm working on that now. I'm going to add trees. I'm going to add hills and mountains and the likes. We're going to make it, and rivers. Rivers are going to be really important, obviously, on a Viking-related map. I'm currently coming through the whole thing, and I'm adding all of the towns and monasteries and raiding points that I think are appropriate to a map like this, and then we're going to colour them in like this. And I've taken all of the colours from an actual medieval map from around the period, so it kind of feels about right, and we're going to make sure it is totally illuminated, lots of sea monsters and things like that. You've joined me on Monday Mapping Movie Madness with Jack Cole, who's my husband. We tend to talk about movies, and we have Tom Knauss with us, who is a freelance writer in the RPG industry with a list of this many titles, and we're talking movies right now, and we're talking particularly about the movie Crash.
Yeah, the question that was presented by Tom was what out of all of the Academy Awards for Best Picture that have won, he asked for our opinion on what was the worst Best Picture winner and what was the best Picture winner. And so for my worst Best Picture winner, I was bringing up the movie Crash, and then Alyssa asked what why it had fallen out of favor in my mind, because I had my mind changed about the film. And obviously, being that I'm a white male in America, I can only speak from what I have read and heard other people comment on the film. I myself can't say that I had certain emotions or certain feelings come up because I felt that they affected me personally. But from it's the film's representation of certain ethnic groups, whether it be people from the African American community, from people from the Latino American community, from immigrants to our country, and then it had things to do with racism from white America, and it has a lot of things that are like white savior complex in multiple iterations, in multiple parts of the film, and furthering stereotypes, misconstruing other stereotypes, and it was a whole slew of those types of things. So
I'm clearly going to have to rewatch it. I don't want to make you uncomfortable, Jack, but I'm going to have to rewatch this thing, clearly.
Yeah, I've been scared to watch it again with my eyes open now. Not scared. That's not the right word. I think uncomfortable. I think it's one of those things where I've been like, because I know that when it first came out, I enjoyed it. Before I, had my, had these opinions come up, I've been kind of like, oh man, I need to watch it again, even though I'm now gonna see all the things that have been brought to my attention, and it's gonna make me feel uncomfortable. But in a way that's almost like a good thing, because you need to notice these things, you need to understand these things, and they should make you feel uncomfortable because these are not cool situations that are being presented here. So yeah, so that's. Oh, hold on, gotta block a spammer.
Block that
I don't
spammer.
remember too much about Crash. I didn't like it. I wasn't enthralled with it when I first saw it.
Mhm.
So it was one of those that was considered, oh, really? You're going to make that a best picture? But actually going back to that, two of the best pictures, Godfather and Godfather 2, on that subject we were just talking about, I'm half Italian, and my aunts refused to watch the movie.
Oh, indeed.
They felt it was a disgrace to Italians. They would not watch it.
Oh, indeed. Okay. Okay.
So can you expound upon that a little, Tom? What was it about that offended her?
I think that the affiliation with criminal enterprise was what it was, that it portrayed Italians as just all mobsters. And that was what, bothered them. I don't think they said they were offended. They just wouldn't watch it because they said, well, that's just depicting, all Italians as being just criminals. And they weren't, they just would never watch it. I never elaborated with them. I was a kid. I was like 5 or 6 when it came out, and they were considerably older than me, so I wasn't going to sit there and say, Annie, Aunt Bridget, why won't you watch, The Godfather, yada, yada, yada. So it didn't do that. I didn't do that, but it's interesting that they felt that way, and they felt very passionately about it.
Right.
Watch it.
So what about for you? What would be your worst best picture?
Oh, there's some really. I don't want to go to the really old ones from the 30s because film making was new, and you can cut some slack, and you look at some of them and you're like, oh, that's so ridiculous. That's just terrible. The two that really stand out to me when I think about worst is Greatest Show on Earth, which is 1958, with Charlton Heston, James Stewart. It was basically a giant commercial for P.T. Barnum and the circus.
Right.
That's all it was. There was virtually no story. There was virtually no plot. It actually had a narrator who would explain what was going on in the circus at that time. And
I forgot about that. Oh,
yes, there was a narrator. It would come with a narrator. Here come the elephants marching onto the nose, and here's the contortionist. Like, is this a movie or a commercial? It sounds like a commercial. And somehow it won the best picture. And the other one for me is Tom Jones. I just hated Tom Jones when I saw that.
You know what? I'm with you on that. That's one where I've tried watching it like a couple of times, and each time I'm just like, I'm just kind of done with this movie. I'm done.
Yeah.
Let's see. Strega saying that she hasn't seen the Godfather films yet. Definitely ones you should watch. Apex is telling her to skip 3 unless you're a completionist.
Yeah, skip 3. No, there's no need to watch 3.
Yeah, I know the re-edit of it just came out. Coppola's the death of Michael Corleone, whatever, the third one, which is what he originally wanted to call the third one. I don't know if I have an interest in seeing the recut of it, just because it's like, even if you rearrange it, I mean, it's still the same pieces that are there. So I mean, even if you cut something out, or I don't know, I don't see how it would, quote unquote, make it better. So
there's actually this is one of the few times where TV actually does a better job than the film. I believe it's called The Godfather Saga.
Okay.
And it's a TV one, and what they do is they put it in chronological order, so it doesn't do the flashback that Godfather 2 does, where you go back to Vito young, and then you go to Hyman Roth and that whole plot line. And it actually has a lot of cut scenes from the theatrical version.
Oh, okay.
So it runs about, I'm trying to remember the runtime. I think it's in the 6 to 8 hour range. But it's really worth it because it does have a lot of scenes that's real omitted that add to the film rather than just were like, oh, that was filler, they need to throw some space in. So there's a scene early on in the flashback scene where you don't really see it, but where the car drives by and all the people standing around, one of them was Hyman Roth. And in the Godfather Saga, they introduce him. They say, oh, this is some young kid, a mechanic. He wants to work for you. What's your name? Oh, Hyman Roth or something like that.
Oh, indeed.
So they bring him in. And Jenko, who was the consigliere before Tom Hagen was, is actually seen in the Godfather Saga. He's like on his deathbed and he's very sick. But other than just mentioning him like they do, you know, in the movie, the theatrical version, in the Godfather Saga, you actually see him.
Oh, fantastic! Oh,
Yeah.
I need to look that up. That's brilliant. Nice. Oh yeah, and that's Alex Vixen had brought up the thing. It's actually a total 9 hours. Is that
okay?
The Godfather Saga. Wowzers.
Yeah, no, that's an all day event.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's you know, you could watch that and then watch the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy, and your weekend is done.
Yes, it's
Nice.
all over.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's see. Moving to the second half of your question, the best picture in our personal opinions. Oh, I apologize, Alyssa. Do you have one? You want? Okay. All right.
No, I would have to not only look it up, but then spend a few hours going through all of those films because I don't follow films that closely.
Yeah, and that's one of those things. I'm kind of like, so you know, Tom, when you were talking about, you know, what you did when you first started getting into films, you know, going through, you know, the IMDb top 250 and the best pictures, that's actually something that I recently have decided that it was something that I never did that I now need to do, and it's actually been because I've been doing like my movie memories on Monday, where I'm going back, you know, every year, and I pull up that year in movies, and I'm like, okay, so what came out this year? And then there's all these ones where it's like, you know, all these films that, like, you know, this person won Best Actor from, and this person won Best Actress from, and this won Best Picture, and I'm like, holy crap, I have never even seen any of these movies, and I like, god dang it, how I have like this giant gap in my film, you know, repertoire of like all these great classics that have, you know, won awards. And I'm like, all right, that's it. I need to just make a list of all the best picture winners, all the best actor, best acting, maybe even best director winners, best foreign film pictures, and then just, you know, start crossing them off, you know, and just go through, you know, because I definitely need to fill it. And, you know, for the best picture is actually really hard because over the years there have been so many good. I mean, there's Patton, there's like Butch Cassidy, there's, you know, The Godfathers, as you brought up. Chinatown, for God's sakes.
Nicholson, yeah.
There's so many good movies that have won. I mean,
thank you, by the way, Nerdy Drunken Monkey Goblin, for having the best awesome name that I've heard in a long time. But thank you for the follow. Nerdy Drunken Monkey Goblin.
That is the best. That is the best.
That is a good name. Sorry, Jack. Continue.
I think I'm gonna go with. Hold on. Did it? No, I think it.
Not Shawshank did not win Best Picture.
No, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go Lawrence of Arabia. That's probably gonna be mine.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, I did not expect that.
Yeah, because that's actually one that when I like years ago. God, how long ago was it? Was it like 7 years ago, 8 years ago? I actually tried to do my top 10 favorite films of all time, which in my opinion, if you're like, give me your top 10, I'm like, that's impossible. I can't narrow it down to 10. What are you doing? And I think, it's not in my top 10, but I think it was like in that 11 to 15 range, and it eventually got cut. But I think that movie is brilliant. It's fantastic. It's directed well. It's got amazing cinematography. The acting is great. The score is great. It's, you know, it's got great bits of action. It's got great bits of drama. It's got these great conversations. These scenes where, I mean, you actually can feel. I mean, obviously, this is talking about a time when, you know, none of us were around. None of us now were around to experience these things, but I feel that they get the tension and the conflict and the on the political world and the on a world scale. I thought they just did it so well. I gave a shit. I felt what was going on, and so that would probably be mine. I think it's great.
Okay. Fair.
Yeah.
I'm going to divide mine into two periods. I'm going to go into the black and white, and then I'll go into the modern.
Okay.
Black and white, I'm going to have to say Casablanca.
Yes.
It has just so many great scenes, so many great lines. It's hard to go through life without hearing at least 5 or 6 lines from the movie.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's a week goes by where I don't say I'm shocked to learn that there's gambling in this establishment. And you're winning, sir. Oh, thank you.
Thank you. It's freaking brilliant. Yeah.
Someone says something, I'm always like, I'm shocked to learn that this is going on.
Thank you for that.
For modern, I'm going to exclude the Godfathers and Lord of the Rings, because I would put Return of the King, just I'm a Lord of the Rings nut. But I'm actually going to go with one that's kind of surprising. Is going to be Platoon.
Oh, okay.
When I saw Platoon in the theater, I have to say 2 hours flew by in what felt like 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And even when I rewatch it now and I look at it, and it seems like the scenes just go so quickly, and you're like, oh my god, that's already got to that point. I mean, it's an hour and 15 minutes into the movie. That it just kind of like, it just stuck with you, because it was really one of the first movies that really looked at the Vietnam War, outside of being, I don't want to say rah-rah, but it was kind of like, obviously The Deer Hunter was before it. That's
right,
pretty bleak picture of the war.
Right.
But it really wasn't set as much in Vietnam as Platoon was pretty much exclusively set in Vietnam. So I really felt, to me, it was really powerful, and I really can still rewatch it, despite how awful some of it is, and not in terms of quality, in terms of the events that happen.
The events that 100% with that. Nice. It's funny, going back to your first pick, your black and white pick. Even though I picked Lawrence of Arabia as my best of the best pictures, but it's not on my top 10. At least when I tried to do it at the time. It might be now. I'd have to reevaluate. Oddly enough, Casablanca is actually in my top 10 of my favorite films. But I think it's one of those things where I rate movies, for me personally, as you've seen when I post my list like on Facebook. There's so many films that it's like I know this movie is not great, but for me, I love it, and so it immediately gains like plus 50 points, kind of a thing. And so it's one of those things where, or it's like someone always like people always are like what is it? Citizen Kane is the greatest film ever made, and I'm always like, Citizen Kane is a great film from the creation of film side of things. Mm-hmm. Personally, I don't even think it would break top 50 on my favorite films list. I acknowledge it as a brilliant film, and what went into making it was great and everything, and that's fantastic. Not for me, it's fine. It's great. It's not one that I'm like, oh, I'm gonna pop in Citizen Kane, let's watch that, or like, what was the one that Leonardo finally won, Revenant, when he finally won the Academy Award? I was like, that was a great film. Of the cinematography and the action and the acting was great. It was well directed. I loved the filming technique where the director only wanted to use natural lighting, and so they had to film everything. Do I ever want to see that movie again? Hell no. That movie made me depressed as hell, and it made me just feel really uncomfortable the whole way through. But I can acknowledge, it's like, that was a great movie. Do you want to watch it? No. It's like, I do not want to watch Revenant ever again. Thank you very much.
Like Requiem for a Dream.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you don't want to watch it again. You're like, okay, I'm depressed enough. Yeah,
I'm
good. I got it.
I'm good. I'm set.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
I think one of the most interesting stories, to me at least, movies, is those movies that were quote unquote kind of bombed, and over the years they gained much more status. The perfect example is It's a Wonderful Life. Mm-hmm. It's a Wonderful Life was considered a bomb when it came out. It didn't do well. Right. Its reviews are mixed. People are like, it's okay, it's good. And then the whole story of how it became the staple for Christmas is amazing. That NBC bought the movie for virtually nothing, or I think nothing actually, got the rights to it, and then started playing it every year at Christmas.
And then
After
it just got ingrained in everybody's heads.
Right. It became the Christmas staple. People would wait for Christmas just to watch It's a Wonderful Life. Shawshank kind of didn't have really a similar background. It was nominated. I know it was nominated. It didn't win Best Picture. But I think it just did so-so at the box office. I don't think it was a giant hit or anything like that.
Yeah, I don't recall it being, it hitting very well. I know, and it was one of those things where I think it was, even for them at the time, it's like they almost didn't know how to market it, because it's like, well, it's based on based on a novella by like Stephen King, but it's not a Stephen King story, it's not,
Right.
And it's like, it's a prison redemption story. So it's like, they couldn't even market it right. And so it was like, I don't think it just did well at all. And then the critics that saw it were kind of like, yeah, it's all right. And so everybody reading reviews were like, well, I don't want to go see this weird ass movie. Like,
Right.
what is this? And then now people are like, oh, Shawshank Redemption is so good. Oh, it's great.
Number 1 on IMDb Top 250.
Oh shit, really? Is it?
It's been in that position for years now, like 5 to 10 years. It's been number 1 for quite a while.
And that's one of the things that I actually find really fascinating, because all of the IMDb ratings are that's member ratings. Those are just people that you have to have an account with IMDb. But so that's not critics. That's not it's purely based on, I'm a movie lover. I have an account with IMDb. I'm going to rate this movie. So that's the public basically has, the Internet Movie Database user public have been like, this is the best movie ever. That's fantastic. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, another one too is Blade Runner. I remember when Blade Runner came out. And Harrison Ford was just hot off of Star Wars. And it kind of was just like dark, a little too noir for people. It did okay. The reviews were okay. They weren't like, oh my God, you need to see this.
Right.
And as the years went by, it gained a larger cult following, and it became much more prominent and much more respected film than it was when it initially came out, as opposed to one that when it initially came out has really lost a lot of traction over the years, is Avatar.
Right. Well, we say that, at least it's probably in the States, because I mean that thing just got re-released in China, and it pushed it back over into the top. It's now the top spot again in the worldwide box office,
which I still think is bullshit.
I think it made $100 million on its re-release in China. It's like something. It's like, whoa, okay. The Chinese love Avatar. They love that movie. So yeah, in the States we're kind of like, every subsequent viewing we're kind of like, all right, that's fine.
Yeah, I saw it in the theater when it came out in IMAX, and it was one of the first big 3D movies, and I'm old enough to remember 3D when it had those cheesy glasses, and it was like this creature thriller, and the thing would go to come out and try and get you, and you're like, oh come on, this is so ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it was like the first one though that was actually like, wow, this is really cool. Was I like really dying to see it again? Not really.
Right.
So.
Right. And then, James Cameron being what he is, he's like, I've got like a bajillion sequels for him. Great. When are they coming out? Later. Okay. Still waiting for number 2 after all these years. Still waiting for 2. I think it's coming out next year. Maybe this year. I don't think anybody's done any filming for it, so I'm not really sure how that works. I mean, his clout as a director, I don't think is as great as he thinks it is. I don't think, these days, if it's something like, James Cameron wants you to drop everything and do his next Avatar film, I don't know how many actors would be like, yes, all my other projects that I've got, I'm gonna ditch them all.
Yeah, no, I don't think so either.
Let's see. Princess Strega says, Jack, what is your favorite horror comedy? For her, it would be Army of Darkness. Let's see. Horror comedy. Is Ghostbusters considered horror comedy? Or is that just comedy?
I think that's more just comedy.
Army of Darkness is a good, oh, good lord. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, here, cat.
Yeah. We're starving our cat, Tom.
Oh, mine always have the same complaint.
He's just wanting attention. He actually just came in bringing his little stuffed Chewbacca toy. So he's just, hey, look at me. Okay, well, no, see, I don't know if it's horror either, because yes, the subject is about vampires, but I was gonna say What We Do in the Shadows, but it's not horror. I mean, yes, there's vampires and werewolves, but that's pure comedy.
Does Fright Night count?
I think
I
Fright
would
Night
say
would
Fright
count.
Night, yeah.
Is that yours, Alyssa?
I think that's mine.
Nice.
I like Fright Night.
Let's see. I pulled up a list here just so I can kind of see. I was a big fan of Zombieland. I like that one.
Does that count as a horror?
That was good.
Zombies eating people. That's horror, right?
Kind of dark.
Oh, okay. Here we go. This will be mine. Cabin in the Woods. That one will be mine. That one will be mine.
Is that a comedy?
Yeah, the movie's hilarious. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
The whole, when it goes to the behind the scenes crew of the office staff that are running the nightmare scenario that are trying to keep the elder gods at bay, it's hilarious. Especially the guy who's always pulling for the mermaid to be or the merman to be the winner on the poll of the monsters, and then he finally gets to meet it at the end of the film, and it takes him out. It's so good. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, I'd have to go for Shaun of the Dead on that one.
Well, nice one.
Nice.
That's a good choice.
That's a good one. So now, do you like? Now, I know some people that are, that's obviously a very British film. I know some people who aren't the biggest fan of British comedy. I'm assuming that, with that being your choice, you have no problem with British humor.
No, I don't. I'm a huge fan of the Monty Python Flying Circus. I love the TV show. The movie, nice. I hate to admit it, I'm not a huge fan of the movies.
Oh, indeed.
For me, the humor just didn't translate well. I just found it kind of more, and I find that most people who love the movies don't like the TV show.
Gotcha.
That's just my personal experience. I loved The Young Ones. Have you ever seen that from the early 80s?
I have not seen it, but I've heard it's good, and I've seen clips of it.
Young Ones is freaking hilarious.
It's hysterical. I used to watch, oh gosh, what was the name of that one? Oh, I watched Doctor Who. I mean, nice. I've seen every Doctor Who episode ever made.
Tom, did you ever see the bit that Rick Mayall did called Bottom?
Yes, I saw a couple of them.
Did you ever see their on-stage tours that they did?
No, I did not.
You should check them out. Check them out. Those two guys are freaking hilarious. The way that they deal with hecklers, or like one of them falls off script, you should check them out on YouTube. It'll have you in tears if you like Bottom and those guys.
There's one scene where part of their set isn't cooperating. Rick Mayall is trying to close like the door, and it's not latching, and it keeps opening, and obviously the audience finds that hilarious, but he's trying to keep the scene going, and so for a moment he like snaps because he's just pissed that the set isn't functioning appropriately. But it's very funny. It's not like he snaps at it. He's like raging. He makes it into a bit just on the fly. It's really good. Let's see. Strega brings up Red Dwarf. Did you ever watch Red Dwarf?
I did not. I saw Blake 7. I used to watch that sometimes too.
Nice. Nice.
Red Dwarf is good. Red Dwarf is good. If you're a fan of British comedies, Red Dwarf, I think is up there. But you've got to get through, I think, what is a dated first or second series.
Okay.
Yeah, the first series is probably the weakest out of the entire. Yeah, I always. It's funny in the States, the series is obviously the entire show, but in England, series is what we refer to as seasons. Mm-hmm. But yes, the first season / series is definitely the weakest of them, but still pretty good. Good.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out.
Strega wants to know, Tom, if you've seen the 1996 Doctor Who movie.
That's the one that's set in Los Angeles, I believe, with Oliver was his name McCann? He was the Doctor, and the Master was the enemy. I'm pretty sure it was an Americanized version of it. Mm-hmm. It was okay. It was nothing special. If that's the one I remember, I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
That's it.
They did find. I did like how they tried to find. They found a way to tie it all in, so it does actually fit in the canon of Doctor Who. Mm-hmm. Even so much as them having when they introduced the War Doctor, played by
Hurt?
yes, thank you, played by John Hurt, who is the Doctor before he was the Ninth Doctor. They actually filmed a short. It was like a short, like 5 minute. It was like a short film, but it was supposed to be the bridge between McGann when McGann transitions into the War Doctor. It was actually really cool. They actually brought him back to be in this scene where he talks to this woman, and it's basically like, in order to fight the Daleks for like the ultimate battle against for time and for the universe, he needs to like forego all of his values as the Doctor, and that's why he becomes the War Doctor, and then he's now the John Hurt Doctor, and that's the Doctor that the Doctor wants to forget about. That's the version of himself he wants to do. And so it's this great like 5 minute short film. When they brought back McGann, it was so cool. It was like, oh damn, they were able to tie in. And I know they kind of tried to do that for the film too, because they had McCoy in the very beginning, when he gets taken out like right off the bat. But for the, like you said, for the American audiences, they were probably just like, what is happening? The movie is so weird. Yeah. What is happening?
Yeah.
That was Strega's first experience with the Doctor. Yeah, going into it for the not knowing anything about the history, how was that for you, Strega? If you went into it completely blind, like, did you enjoy it? Did it make you want to watch like the series? That's actually interesting. Going back to a horror comedy question, Peck says They Live or Gremlins would be his choice.
Oh, okay. That's the Roddy Piper one with the glasses?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
The one where we found out, actually, I think it was when Pex was on. I think we found out that Alyssa has never seen They Live, and so we put it. It's on our to watch movie list for her and I. Bex and I were like, what? I mean, it's not like it's a good movie, but it's a fun movie. It's one of those ones where it's like you should have seen it. At least,
well, that was like Princess Bride. Remember, like when we had our little D&D group going, and like Princess Bride came up, and I was like, never seen it. And it's like, okay, stop everything. We're watching Princess Bride right now.
Yeah, it was funny. We were at our friend's house. We used to run our D&D games out of his house. We literally took a break and we're like putting on Princess Bride so Alyssa can watch it. And I think we all hassled her because at the end she was like, "Yeah, it was all right." And we were all like, "What?"
Yeah, like, oh!
We're all quoting the movie as it's happening. And she's probably sitting there going, "I can't really experience this movie if you're all going to be doing the scenes right around me as they're coming up." Yeah,
that's funny. Yeah. So some of the movies too that I find like are just not good, but I like. Flash Gordon is one of them.
Oof, there's a
example
movie.
Of what? Totally.
1980 movie. Would I like if I was teaching a film class and I wanted to show here's how you make a movie? Would I show it to the students? Absolutely not.
No, of course not.
But when you watch it and it's kind of like this is so goofy and so silly that it's actually funny. It actually works.
Yeah, definitely up there in like one of the best guilty pleasure like movies ever. Totally.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the only person who really became it, well, Max von Sydow was obviously a major actor, but I think was Timothy Dalton was the Baron.
And Brian Blessed was already he too was already kind of he already had his career kind of set at that point as well.
Yeah.
But other than them, the only other person.
Right.
Yeah.
Sam Jones.
Yeah, exactly. I think he's only doing conventions as Flash Gordon. I mean,
probably. Or he's like Gil Gerard, who just did Buck Rogers in the 21st century.
Yeah, forever.
I couldn't tell you anything else he did.
Yeah, exactly. Like we will only know you as this. My equivalent of that is the '95 film Hackers with Matthew Lillard and Angelina Jolie and what's his name from Trainspotting I can't remember, but that's for me. The movie is so stupid, but I absolutely love it. It's it's like computers and hacking don't work that way. That's not how it's so bad. It's great. Half the time it felt like you were like a cheesy 90s music video. Hack the planet to Strega, exactly. It's probably one of those things where since Lillard's obviously a big gamer, it's probably one of those things where you can't ever say anything to him about it because he's probably like heard it a million times. You can't bring up Hackers at all.
Oh.
At least he kind of embraces it though. When he plays Cyberpunk with Pondsmith, when he runs, he plays a netrunner named Serial Killers, which is his character's name in Hackers. So it's like, okay, so at least he's kind of embraced it now. But I think in the past he was like, why do people? He's even said like people were like, I love like the people would like tweet at him and they'd be like, I loved you in Hackers. And he'd be like, I wish you would. Wish you'd like me in something else. That movie's not great.
It's not good. Not one of my better days.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, one of the ones I wanted to bring up too, because I know you guys are both big Cthulhu fans, that I found to be so disappointing. The first two thirds were so Cthulhu, and then devolved into B-movie garbage.
Oh, I
Ninth
think.
Gate.
The Ninth Gate. I thought you were gonna go The Cure for Wellness. Okay.
No.
Okay, no. But yeah, The Ninth Gate. Johnny Depp. Actually, Alyssa, have you seen The Ninth Gate?
I don't. I think I have, but it was a long time ago.
I'm gonna add that to the list. We should.
I thought you were going to talk about the Color of Space with Nicolas Cage.
Oh, Color Out of Space, the new one.
Which I thought the first part was okay, and then it just started to lose me.
Yeah, and that one was. I think that one actually was a direct adaptation of Cthulhu after.
And I want to see them do more of it. I love the fact that they are doing more and more of these adaptations, and it wasn't like the worst, but I wanted more out of it.
For me,
Jack, what was the one that you said?
Cure for Wellness, where the guy's looking for his boss in the Swedish hospital retreat that's like it's like a wellness center in the Swiss Alps or something, and he's like a player party of one. He's like the single guy who's going up to investigate what happened to his boss, and weird shit is happening at the wellness center, and he's trying to figure out, and there's like the people in the village down the mountain are really shady, and he's trying to figure out. It's like this movie is so Cthulhu, and then it turns into weird generic there's actually like a villain who's can't eat, like a burning log lands on him and he pushes it off, and you're like, what? Aren't you just supposed to be a dude? What is happening?
Tom, have you seen it? Tom,
what's up?
Have you seen it?
No, I've not. I've not seen the Cure.
It's worth watching. It's worth watching because the first half. It's like so you're a writer, okay, and you're obviously on point for doing some Call of Cthulhu for a certain company we won't mention, but it's like you watch the first half of it and you seriously sit there, and Jack and I looked at each other and went, this is so cool as a scenario. This is on point. It was hitting all of the notes of an investigation beginning to emerge. And then for the second half, it's like, oh, what the hell happened? This is a train wreck. I would be seriously interested in your opinion.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of the way the Ninth Gate progressed. It built up, it was kind of suspenseful, and it's kind of investigating things, and then it just deteriorated into B-movie schlock. It just went okay, this is silly. This stupid. It had you with the whole weird creepiness and strange things happening, and then it just went into it just kind of fell apart, and that's a disappointing thing in a lot of these films that start with the that Cthulhu-esque feeling, is they just kind of fall apart.
Right.
They don't finish it. They get the openings, feel and get some of the story elements together, but they just can't tie it together at the end. It just comes undone.
Pex asked earlier on, by the way, about our favourite 80s action movie.
I'm going to make a note of that. I'm going to quickly mention what Strega was saying about the Cthulhu movies. Her favorite Cthulhu movie is Dagon. The only one that I could find out was the Spanish horror film from 2001. Is that the one you're referring to, Strega?
Never heard of it.
And then she says the Faculty is sort of Cthulhu-esque.
Okay.
I could see that. I could see someone actually writing us for a scenario for a convention, modernizing it. Which you have a modern Cthulhu adventure you run, don't you? That's
I do. I run the Detention Club, which is Breakfast Club Modern Cthulhu.
Nice. Yeah. So that, and I think Faculty is probably on par with a scenario like that. Students realizing their I don't know, maybe they realize their teachers are cultists for an elder god or something. I don't know. Prex is also bringing up In the Mouth of Madness. I do like that one as well, with Sam Neill. And then he says, continuing on with Sam Neill, there's also Event Horizon for like the sci-fi horror version. But the earlier question of 80s action movies, Tom, you want to take away on that one?
Oh, you know what? One's fresh in my mind because I just happened to catch the last 30 minutes of it last night, and that was Predator.
Ooh, no.
That's kind of like a low budget, not much expected out of it. It's still so rewatchable today, and that's right off the top of my head, only because I just saw it. Otherwise, I'll have to do a little thinking on what other ones, but that's the one that came right to mind.
No, that is a solid one right there. That is a good one. Is there an 80s action movie that could possibly compete against that?
Well, there's Aliens, the sequel to Alien.
Aliens is great. I remember watching that with my D&D group, and I swear it changed how we thought about so many things. Aliens started to creep in, because we played a lot of Traveller at the time too, so you can imagine the effect it had on our Traveller games.
Oh, Jesus.
But also the character development and the dialogue that the characters would have together. It literally just right there was a crossroads for how we all thought and interacted and played and created our games from that point forwards.
Yeah, and it's actually, if you think about it, it's like a 3-year period. You have Terminator in 84, iconic 80s action. You have Aliens in 86, which is, I mean, because the first film isn't an action film. The first film's a freaking horror film. Yeah. So bringing in the action on that, and then, the year later, 87, you now have Predator. It's like you have arguably 3 of the biggest sci-fi action, icons all within the 3-year span in the 80s. I don't know how you beat that trifecta right there. That's
yeah, how would you even shortlist them, actually?
Yeah, I don't know, because they are also so different, and obviously not only from like the villain standpoint, but the film itself, like the structure is so completely different from each one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, those movies, though, too, they I feel, and this is as a non-movie goer, I feel like they introduced things that were unique. I mean, Tom, when we started this discussion, you were talking about, like, so many films and remakes are, like, they're redos, right? And they're remakes. But here's a series of movies that I think did something unique.
Yeah, I really think that. Predator is such a simple concept. An alien hunter comes to Earth and hunts people. I mean, it's another take on The Most Dangerous Game, the old short story. But it does do that in a way that moves the action along, and introduces you to the characters quick enough. One of the problems I have, I'm going to diverge just a tiny bit with some of the modern war movies, is the characters move so quickly, and they're all dressed in the same uniforms, and they all kind of look alike, but you don't know who the heck is who. Right. I just watched Hacksaw Ridge.
Oh yeah.
And it was like I couldn't tell who the heck was who because they all looked the same. It was dark. They're all wearing the same uniform. They're all talking the same. So I didn't know who just got killed. Who was that? Which guy was that? I don't know. Hold on. At least in Predator, you got to be introduced to the characters, and you felt like empathy when they got killed,
right,
by the Predator, rather than just that's just another extra. Oh well, right. Another guy in a red uniform. So okay.
Right. But yeah, each one had a unique personality. You were introduced to them. They had a unique look to them, and while you could tell they were all part of the same squad, like their uniforms were just different enough that you could tell, like who was who, and even some of them even had things that stood out, like the fact that and I don't know the actor's name. Black actor, bald. He was the gunner, friends with
Mac.
Yes, Mac. Thank you. The guy who played Mac, he always did that thing where he had a thing where he was like shaving with the dry shaving with the razor. His little quirk that he had. You had the the nerdy guy with the glasses, which is actually funny because he's obviously he's a screenwriter. He's not really an actor. He actually he wanted the director to look at his script for, oh gosh, I'm not going to be able to pull it. But he wanted the director to look. He wanted Tiernan, whatever, the director of Predator. He wanted him to look at his script, and he was like, okay, play a role in my movie, and we'll talk about it when we're on set, basically. And so but the screenwriter actually got really into like the role, and he was like, this is really cool. And he actually looked into like things that guys wore, and since he obviously he actually wore glasses in real life, he actually found like what the guys that like army soldiers that wear glasses, like the tech glasses, like not tactical, the tactical glasses they wear, and the director was like, no, you have to wear like nerdy, your big old black glasses. And he was like, oh man, but army guys wouldn't wear that. And he's like, yeah, I don't care though, it'll make you stand out more as a character, and it'll be clear that you're kind of like the nerdy guy of the group. And he's like, oh man. I always just thought that was funny. It was like, he actually got into the role, and he couldn't actually wear the cool tactical goggles. He had to wear the big old nerdy thick black glasses. It's like, oh man.
Alazilla wants to know if Conan counts, and I think we all say it does.
Yeah, of course.
Which one, the Barbarian or the Destroyer?
There was only the Barbarian.
Destroyer.
No.
It's one of those things where Barbarian is a better film for sure. Yeah. But I was introduced to it through Destroyer, so it's one of those things where I was like, I have like this weird nostalgia thing for Destroyer. Even though I watch it now and I'm like, oh, this movie is real bad. It is. At least you can watch Barbarian and go, oh, this movie is pretty freaking good. I can dig it. And then Destroyer's just like, oh no. But my nostalgia goggles.
I remember watching Conan the Barbarian, and just the brutality of it, the grittiness of it, the music, his muscles, his physique, but also that little bit of swordplay that he's got. I was hooked. That's another one that changed how we role played our games. That was actually the movie that made me start to throttle back on all of my magic in my world, so I could try to emulate just that low magic type of setting. And then Destroyer came out, and it broke my little heart. I watched it and I liked it, but it just wasn't the same.
Yeah. There was such a plethora of 80s fantasy movies that when you compare the Lord of the Rings series to them, you just go, oh my gosh, these are so what a step down.
Right.
The Beastmaster or Sword and the Sorcerer, which we recently rewatched. My friends and I rewatched it, and it wasn't as bad as I expected.
Okay.
It was decent. Now, Hawk the Slayer was a totally different story. That was utterly awful.
There's so many of those that I've been scared to go back and watch, because I know I'm gonna be like, oh no, my little nostalgic heart is gonna be just keep the happy memory of it alive. Okay, cool. Allah agrees. Destroyer never happened. Obsidian Risk saying still waiting for King Conan. Yeah, totally right.
Now, who's playing Conan in that? It's not Schwarzenegger, is it?
It would be, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he would play the old King Conan, I think, for probably one of those, one of his last adventures kind of a thing. One of the last conflicts he has to face, Let's see. Princess Strega says, Alyssa, Mongoose Publishing put out a D20 version of Conan.
Okay.
A while ago, yeah. Yeah, that's a long time ago. They had that license. It actually did work for them at the time.
Nice. The thing for me though, so here's talking mechanics for a moment. For me, Conan never quite fit into the D20 system. For me, and I think it's just the way that the combat works. But we also played a lot of RuneQuest, and the percentile system from RuneQuest did work for a Conan-like feel, because the whole the mechanic of parrying and the damage to the sword or the armor, the chance of dodging, I felt like the percentile system fit way better, and especially too because Conan is brutal. One sword slash and it's all over, and RuneQuest had that. So for me, it was the RuneQuest system to get that type of feel.
That makes sense.
Yeah, Alyssa, I have a question for you. How do you feel that Swords and Wizardry would hold up for supporting Conan?
Can I make an admission on air with you, Tom? I've never played Sword and Wizardry.
Oh, okay. I thought you may have.
Yeah, no, I haven't. From the little I know about it, I think it could fit. I think it could because it is a little bit more brutal. But I think the setting, at least in parts, has got to have this low magic, high brutality type of thing going on, where skill can absolutely be the thing that sort of keeps you alive. Yeah, and I'm not sure if Swords and Wizardry has that. You'd have to tell me.
I would say it's got some of the brutality. I don't know if I could say the magic level is low enough to make it feel that gritty. I would say the magic level is probably middle of the road. It's not like Forgotten Realms where magic was, king, but it's not like, totally like Dark Sun, gritty in that term. So it could work. It's not a guarantee, but I think it could work. It would certainly work better than 5e. I don't see how 5e would really work.
Oh, right, no, exactly. No, 5e's... I like 5e. I like 5e quite a bit, but no, I wouldn't try to run a Conan the Barbarian-like game in 5e.
Right.
No.
Right. But, and that was why, I couldn't, I'm okay with the D20 system. I like the D20 system when it, when third edition kind of rejiggered everything on how, that was played. But when people started trying to translate that system to other things, like even D20 Modern, it's one of those things where, they didn't, it's like the hit points didn't really work in like a modern setting. Because it'd be like, well, my character has like 84 hit points and you just shot me in the face with a shotgun, and sure, it did like 5d6 damage, but even if you maxed out, you're only doing 30 damage to me, and I have 84 hit points. So okay, I guess that critical, shotgun blast, I guess, just winged you. I mean, I don't understand how that works.
Well,
like,
that actually happened in one of our games. Remember, we played
that's
D20.
the example I'm referencing exactly,
and it was my character, and the bloody bad guy had me pinned up against a wall and did a full shotgun blast to my face. And I was like, okay, so that's about a third of my hit points. And it had a completely wrong feel to it.
Right, exactly. Well, in almost any other system, it would be like, yeah, no, you just died. I'm sorry. It was great playing, but you got pinned, and he shot you, and he critted, and you're done. You got full on with a shotgun blast. Yeah. Going back with the action 80s movies, Strega says the 89 Batman, which is the first one with Michael Keaton. That one is pretty good, and Jack Nicholson is the Joker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Pex brings up the list of like all of them. Good Lord, holy scamoly! Runaway, Silverado, First Blood. Is First Blood an action movie though?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, it counts.
Yeah,
it counts.
Yeah, it is. It is.
And First Blood was bloody cracking too.
Yeah.
That was another one that I felt was like going into unique territory.
Mm.
Yeah, and that's one that we actually watched not too long ago, within the last 5-6 years, and I mean that one for me still holds up, especially since it's obviously got the commentary of him being a Vietnam War vet, and then the action at the end of it. Let's see other ones with Pex, Midnight Run, They Live, Beverly Hills Cop. Oh yeah, Beverly Hills Cop.
Does that count as an action?
48 hours too, I was thinking.
In 48 hours, yeah, those would count. There's the cop shooting, shooting scenes. They, car chases and that type of thing. Yeah. Oh, Lethal Weapon. See, there you go. Big Trouble in Little China. Oh, good lord, there's so many.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually, so Tom, Jack and I recently started, I say recently, it was probably pre-COVID, but we started re-watching, like, all of these trilogies in these series. So we actually re-watched all of the Beverly Hills. We re-watched all of, like, the Lethal Weapons back to back. And it's actually surprising how much a lot of them hold up.
Yeah, I would imagine the lethal weapons have held up fairly well. I would say the same, too. For the others, there's not too many that really didn't. The ones that don't hold up well, I think, are like the 70s ones. The 70s ones just they look so dated. Because I remember, I live in New Jersey, and I'm close to New York City, and I worked in New York City for 5 years, and the New York City I worked in and the New York City from the 1970s were two totally different worlds.
Gotcha.
You know, the 1970s New York was someplace you avoided. You didn't want to go to New York. You know, it was kind of like very gritty, very, you know, and when those movies catch that feel of it, like if you watch like The French Connection and they're driving around, you know, under those tunnels and everything else, and you know, that feel is gone. That's not the New York that most people look at and see today, because it's a bygone era, you know, and it just feels very dated because I'm so close to it and I grew up around it that it's just like that looks, that's not New York. You know, maybe you look at, you know, Vegas, even from Vegas from the 70s. All right, it still looks the same. It's not the same hotels, obviously, but, you know, it's got the lights, it's got this, you know, the strip, it's still the strip. You know, Los Angeles probably looks very similar. New York looks totally different than it did back in the 1970s. It just looks very dated.
You know, it's funny. That's, you know, I actually never thought about that. That's actually, like a good point. Like, you know, a lot of films from the 70s that are, you know, when I think about it, like they're like taking place like in Hollywood or Los Angeles. It's like, those I don't think feel dated at all. No. You know, my brain, when you were talking about like, you know, dated stuff from the 70s, because I don't know, there was something about that shift between the 70s and 80s where, you know, I'm thinking of certain things like with either whether it be, you know, sci-fi films or, you know, like dystopian future films. There was definitely a clear shift between the 70s and 80s where it's almost like the 70s was still almost holding on to the, like that space age, you know, mentality from the past, and the 80s I think really started to grind things down. And you know, they might have been right at the border because obviously Alien came out in
79.
Okay. And you know, and that was kind of like right at the cusp of like, you know, making the future seem like it's kind of a dirty, gritty place. But like certain things, like, you know, obviously like, you know, Westworld or you know, Planet of the Apes, or even like one of my favorite, you know, sci-fi films, A Rollerball with James Caan. I love that movie. But all of the scenes where they're outside of the ring, you know, and they're in the real, like they're in the world, I mean, it just feels so dated. It's like, this is like, if this was made in the 80s, this would feel grungy. This would be almost like a Blade Runner. You know, maybe not the areas that he was in because he obviously was a celebrity, and so they'd be a little cleaner. But I think there would still be a tinge of dystopia going on. While, you know, in the actual film, it's like everything is clean and pristine, and like, you know, everything's like the freaking shag carpet still, and there's like these pristine leather couches, and everything looks kind of like weird space agey, even though we're kind of beyond that, you know, aesthetic at this point. But yeah, that's, you know, that's definitely one where by today's standards, it's like, wow, this feels dated. I still love the movie to death, but it feels dated at times.
Talking about great remakes, though.
Oh no, that remake was so bad. And that's one of those movies too, like I was talking about at the very beginning of this whole conversation, you know, when we started our you know, our session today. That Rollerball is a perfect movie, in my opinion, that a remake for it could be amazing, especially, you know, people that love sports movies, they like political dramas, and it could be great. But the remake they made in the 90s was, or it was early 2000s. I want to say maybe, so, yeah. I think it was like 2002, maybe. Oh, it was so bad. Oh my God, it was so bad. Hey, I was right. Alex Sisson confirms 2002.
Okay, good.
Gosh, it was horrible. I don't think I have anything good to say about it, like, at all.
I think the bright line between the 70s and the 80s and was the advent of the personal computer, because I think it changed our outlooks on everything. Right. You know, life underwent a huge shift, a paradigm shift for us. You know, when there were no PCs, the concept of having a computer in your house was totally alien. Computers were something you saw where they had those big reel tapes that you would see in the background, you know, in some military installation. And now you have a computer in my house. Oh my gosh, this is so different. And I think that changed people's outlooks. And we went to, like you were talking about just a moment ago, Jack, the very sci-fi feeling to a different feeling. And I think that was really what kicked that into overdrive, was the personal computer.
Yeah.
just like today, the internet changed things from the 1880s until 2000 or whenever the internet became
Right.
more prevalent, really changed our outlook on things.
Totally. Yeah, it's funny, if you think about it, even films that are 80s, 90s, if you try to watch them today, like how many horror films out there now wouldn't happen because someone's like, I'm just gonna grab my phone and we'll be done. This will be set. I think they even made a joke of that in like one of those parody horror movies where it's like the person like calls and is like trying to do spooky and they're like, I just traced this call. Aren't you my neighbor or something? Okay. And the guy was like, no, and like hung up the phone. And it's like, wait a minute, like, or it's like the call's from inside the house. It's like, wait. You have the same IP address as I do. You're inside the house. It's like, oh shit! Damn it!
Right.
Yeah,
that's the challenge too, though, of doing Cthulhu Modern is the cell phone and the smartphone.
I was going to ask you about that, Tom, because I know that your preferred Cthulhu is the modern or even futuristic. How do you handle that as a keeper? And the players have got computers, the internet, and phones with all of that at their fingertips. How do you take that into consideration?
Turn it against them.
Ooh, like it starts betraying them, like in some way, or
everything you read on the internet may not be true.
Okay.
So yeah, the smartphone is tricky. You could do the tricks like simply like I don't want to give any spoilers because I don't know if people want to play Detention Club, but there is a way I kind of deal with the cell phone, and it does kind of turn it on its head, and they're kind of like it adds to the mystery actually, and it helps them solve things. Another spoiler a little bit, but it is tricky with the cell phone, but it's doable. You can get around it. I mean, it saves the trip to the library from the 1920s. And yes, can they call things? Yeah, they can, but there's some workarounds for it.
Gotcha.
So, like, when you eventually write for a game that is not the convention game you're talking about, let's make an assumption that there is a potential for writing for Call of Cthulhu in the future. Mm-hmm. If you were doing a modern game, would you add like instructions or hints and tips for the keeper about cell phones and modern technology and how to handle it?
Yeah, I would. I mean, well, I've done that for our fantasy games because spells like if I do a mystery, spells like Zone of Truth, Detect Lie, those kind of things. How do you handle that? I have killer perception checks, or I have killer sense motive checks, or I have killer insight checks. If somebody's lying to me, I'm going to figure it out right away. And I give you tips on how to do that. Like people, you don't lie. You just don't tell people everything they want to hear. You hold things back.
Right.
So if someone says, "Did you kill so and so?" instead of saying yes or no, you say, "Well, I heard that blah 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 happened. So no, I'm not lying. I'm telling you something else that you will pick up." And instead of you're thinking, I'm not saying yes or no, I'm not denying it, I'm kind of deflecting. And that's kind of what you try and do.
Right. One of those things where you could be like the argument, like, well, technically what I told you wasn't a lie.
Right.
I mean, it technically wasn't.
Right.
Okay.
I think that so-and-so may have done it.
Right.
Not a lie.
Right.
Not true, but it's not a lie either.
Right.
So, that's the kind of the tricks you got to do, and you got to have a little bit of tips to deal with that with the smartphone and the computer in Cthulhu Modern.
That's like even with it, and I like what you're saying that even like with fantasy games, how you have to find ways to disrupt that. I mean, if you think about it, in 5e, there's a cantrip, so you can cast it an infinite amount of times a day, but it's message, and you can send a message to someone you can whisper it in like I think you have like 25 words, and they're allowed to respond to you. But you so if like you get captured or something, you could be like, so hey, I was in this town, can you come get me, NPC friends, like or person that hired me or somebody that I've met who's now an ally of mine, and it's like, oh well, shit, you can't, they're never going to be able to get captured anymore, or if they're in any trouble, technically they could just send a message, to that person, and it's like, all right, you got to find a way to disrupt that real quick.
Right.
The same thing with like teleport too. If you think about it, at the higher levels, it's like let's get out of here. Let's go. It's like, you got to find a way to stop that somehow.
Right. It's like the conundrum. Like, how do you the one thing I always found like kind of odd is like so-and-so was killed, they're in this adventure and so-and-so died years ago. Okay, well, why didn't somebody resurrect them if they really missed them about that?
Right. Exactly.
Why didn't they raise dead?
Yeah, this legendary king hero who was the greatest king on the land was assassinated. Why didn't his hero friends resurrect it?
Right, exactly.
I mean, these guys are theoretically all like level 20,
right,
paragons of their class. Why didn't the cleric go, got it, don't worry about it, guys, hold on.
Don't worry, it's only a temporary setback.
Exactly.
I'll fix this in a heartbeat.
If the cleric's out, the druid's like, well, I could do it, but he might be an orc now. Is that okay? I'll reincarnate him.
Yeah, crazy.
That's
the one thing. It's like that's hard to. That doesn't make sense in the game. Like the king lives in in this castle. Okay, well, all of his enemies just teleport into his chamber every night. They just keep sending more and more people. Well, how do you stop that?
Right.
Difficult.
You have to start to then create, this type of stone will stop teleportation, or stone covered in living ivy will stop teleportation. But you've got to jump through some hoops to stop that type of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we even had one player who was playing a wizard in 3rd edition, I think. And whatever it was in 3rd, maybe it was 3.5, I don't know. But there was something where making a really low-level wand was super easy and super cheap and not very time consuming. And he was the wizard, and he was kind of why am I adventuring? He's like, I can make bank just selling these on the street corner. He's like, I don't need to. I'm going to be rich by the end of the month. I'm done. He's like, I don't need to adventure anymore. I'm like a level 2 wizard or level 3 wizard. He's like, I'm done. I'm retired. He's like, I'm just going to churn these out every day and sell them to other stupid adventurers who haven't caught on yet that they don't need to go adventure. I was like, oh, yeah, I guess. Yeah. In the fantasy world, sometimes it doesn't quite make sense. You got to kind of break the
economy of most fantasy worlds definitely don't hold up. Definitely not.
No.
Yeah, and why the all-powerful wizards aren't the leaders of every nation. I don't know. I'm pretty sure that level 20 wizard can knock that level 20 fighter out of the throne. He's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna melt your brain. Make a death save, buddy.
Right. I'm just gonna teleport in, and I'll just banish you someplace, and you'll never be seen again.
Yeah, exactly.
End of story.
Exactly. Strega says Thay that's a Forgotten Realms, right?
Yes.
Nice.
Thay
Yeah. Exactly. They're all the red wizards. They're like, yeah, we're in charge. we're and no one's gonna come. No one's gonna try to stop us. Well, they'll try, but.
Circling back to movies really quick.
Yeah.
What are some foreign movies that you like? We've touched upon a few, but we really haven't delved into those too much because, and I'm talking about things that were released in the United States widespread, just kind of that were released in their own country and maybe had a very limited release here in the United States. What are some that you really like?
There is a Japanese film called I think it's called Afterlife. It came out in the late 90s. I actually have no idea if it had any type of US release. It was at the Toronto Film Festival. It looks like that was it. And then it came out in Japan. That probably isn't my. Well, see, and if you're saying I actually don't know how many foreign films I've seen that had very limited runs here. That one is the first one that came to mind. I'm a really, really big fan of Afterlife. And then, if we're going into fantasy action, there's a Japanese film called Azumi, Azumi. I saw it at Lemley Theater in Los Angeles when I still lived in California. And that was it's a somewhat cheesy, fantasy, samurai film, where there's it's kind of with the same retelling of there's the corrupt shogun and that needs to be taken out, and so this this Ronin, general trains up a bunch of young, young kids to grow up to be samurai assassins, and then he sends them after the corrupt, shogunate, and they got to take out all the warlords, leading up to the last guy, kind of a thing. So it's kind of a fun kind of, action samurai film. But I know it had a very, very limited run in the States, and the sequel was garbage because they brought in like crazy fantasy elements that were like a dude who's like part like spider. It was so stupid. It was like, wait, when did this movie turn into a weird fantasy film? This is so bizarre. But the first one was really good. I think it was based on a Japanese manga too. But those are the top two that come up off the top of my head.
Can I throw a few in before Tom answers?
Absolutely.
I'm gonna go Train to Busan. Let the Right One In, and Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Okay.
All of the originals, I really like those.
Yeah, because if you think about it, those originals didn't have any American runs, and it was because of that the American were like, "Ooh, we could remake them."
Yeah.
No one's seen these. We'll be able to make our version of them, and no one will know.
No one will know how badly we botched them up.
What about you, Tom?
I'm going to go for a few. One is called Amores Perros.
Oh, yeah.
It's a Mexican film from, I believe, 2000. It's very similar to Pulp Fiction, but much grittier. Not a feel-good or pick-me-up movie. Another one is going to be Wild Tales. It's from Argentina.
I actually don't know that one.
And it's 2009. That's pretty good.
Tales
Another one that was remade too, an American remake, was called The Secret in Their Eyes.
Oh yeah.
That was originally an Argentinian film.
Oh really? Was it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh. And they remade it, and it always reminded me of like Joseph Conrad's novella, The Secret Share, because it can be taken two ways. Is it the secret share, the person who shares my secret, or is it my sharer who's a secret?
Oh, okay.
And it's always, that title is always taken on the two things. Is it the secret that's in their eyes, or is it the secret in their eyes? So kind of strange.
Gotcha.
I'm trying to think of a couple more off the top of my head. I'm not a huge anime fan. I've seen a lot of the classic anime movies. Spirited Away, I didn't like it.
What are the things like Akira or Ghost in the Shell?
Princess Mononoke, Ghost in the Shell.
Okay.
The one I really liked was Your Name.
Yes.
The anime movie.
Holy
that
scamoli.
Was really good.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, that one was great. That one, oh man, to this day, that's like, number one body swap movie for me. I love that movie so much, and it was really emotional too. I'm not ever afraid to say I'm a very emotional person, so I'm not ever afraid to be like, oh, and then I burst into tears. I was on a plane watching Your Name, and I freaking burst. And Alyssa was sitting next to me, and she was like, what is wrong with you? And I'm just like bawling my eyes out, and I'm just like, it's so beautiful. Yes. I love it, and I'm sad at the same time.
No, it's hard not to be emotional, but I'm just saying emotional, crying or being moved by a film, Capernaum.
Capernaum?
Capernaum is a Lebanese movie. It is utterly depressing. I mean, you will watch it and you will just go, oh my gosh, holy crow. I believe it won Best Foreign Picture in the Academy Awards a couple years ago.
Okay.
But it is difficult to watch.
Okay.
But it is very moving. It's basically, I'll give you a quick synopsis. It's basically a story of a kid. He's like 12 years old. He's in the slums of Beirut. Mm-hmm. And he sues his parents for giving birth to him, bringing him into this world.
Oh.
Yeah, it's bad. Yeah, it's really, and it harps a lot about, the undocumented immigrants. And apparently, I didn't know this. My friends are Lebanese, so I asked them, and they said, apparently there's a identification card you need, but you have to pay a fee for it, even if you're born in Lebanon. To people who lived in Lebanon, you have to pay for this identification card, and these people didn't pay for it, so they weren't technically citizens, and it was just.
Oh damn.
Yeah, it's pretty intense. So, but it's worth watching.
Okay.
But be prepared to, be emotional. Let's put it that way.
Okay, sure. I will add it to my list now. I'll definitely asterisk that one, being like, don't watch this if you're already if you've had a rough day.
Yeah, no. You don't want to see it under those circumstances.
Some other suggestions. Princess Strega says a great foreign action fantasy movie. It's The Wyvern and the White Witch. Never heard of that. Definitely want to look that up.
Never heard of it.
Allah agrees. Let the Right One In is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Now Peck says Rashomon. Now obviously that's gotten a bit of a cult standing here. I don't know how when it originally was released, if it got any acclaim here. Speaking of which, that's actually something. The Seven Samurai released in '54 in Japan. Yeah. I was looking up Academy Award stuff. It didn't release in the States till 2 years later, because the cinematographer was nominated for black and white cinematography at the 97 Academy Awards. And I was actually looking at that list and I was like, 97 Academy Awards. And I'm like, why is he being nominated? I was like, didn't the movie come? I'm like, wait a minute, I got to look this up. And it was because it just took years for it to finally get released here. And so by then they were like, hey, let's nominate this guy that even though the movie came out a couple years ago, we're going to nominate him now because it finally came out here. I'm guessing Rashomon was kind of the same thing, where it probably came out in Japan and nobody in America knew about it. Brooks brings up Aguirre Wrath of God. Yeah. I mean, even today, I can't see many people who have seen that. Fitzcarraldo, same director. Probably another one, which Fitzcarraldo is one of those ones where I have mixed emotions at. I saw it at a time in my life when I watched it with someone who was an unpleasant person later in my life. It wasn't me. No, it wasn't you. No, at the time I watched it, this guy that was in my life was an influence on me. But then as our relationship soured over the years, and so now when I think of that film, I remember him, and I'm like, fuck that movie. Even though I think at the time I enjoyed it, So it's one of those things where it's like I should probably rewatch it and get a fresh up of experience on this, and forget that guy get that out of there.
So we're going a little bit long here, and I do want to be cognizant of Tom's time. But Tom, if there was a movie which, and you might need to say this in several parts, if there was a movie or movies that are just your all-time best for any reason, your top ones that you would absolutely list up there, what would they be?
Oh boy, well. I mean, I'm going to be I think Jack's going to be in a similar boat to me with the Star Wars films and the MCU films. The Lord of the Rings films are going to be at the top. I can still watch. I'm going to estimate I've seen Fellowship of the Ring. I want to say 225 times.
Wow.
Holy shit, really?
Yeah, probably. I mean, not start to finish where I sat there from, start to finish, but, I click on and, Fellowship's on. It's got an hour left. Okay. Nice. I'm in for another hour. So I'm going to have to say the Lord of the Rings movies for sure. After that,
can I ask you what you thought of The Hobbit then? Just as an interlude here.
No.
Okay.
The Hobbit. All right. If there were no Lord of the Rings films and we compared The Hobbit to all the fantasy films that came before it, I would say, yeah, Hobbits are really great. I like the Unexpected Journey. I think it's pretty good. Desolation of Smog. It's okay. It's solid. If it wasn't, the expectations being a Lord of the Rings movie, I would probably think of it higher. Battle of the Five Armies, I think it's a little too dragged out. Again, scale of 1 to 10, it's probably a 6.5, maybe a 7.
Okay.
Whereas the Lord of the Rings are going to be all 10s. And I personally like Fellowship the best. Okay. Fellowship, Return, and Two Towers. But they're all great.
If you're up for it, I actually have a link, and it's I think it's not like it's like a shady link or anything. He did it. He wasn't trying to profit off of it, so I don't think New Line came after him because of that. But there's a guy that I follow on social media. He's a film professor and amateur filmmaker named Chris Hartwell, and he actually has a cut that he did personally of the Hobbit, of the 3 films. And he has nothing but reverence for Peter Jackson. He wasn't doing it to say that I'm a better filmmaker. He wasn't doing it to be like, you know, whatever. But he actually had a whole series of videos where he was explaining the choices he made and, like, you know, things with the original and all these different things. And so he put a lot of thought into it, and he was able to even get the soundtrack to flow with certain things, like so when he edits scenes, like, you know, it just, like, the music doesn't suddenly cut and jar like you away. He actually did a really good job of it. If you were up for it, I'd be really interested in hearing your take on his cut of the Hobbit trilogy, because I think he's able to get it down into one film. I think it's like a 2.5-3 hour movie, I think, or maybe he split it into 2 parts. I'd have to look it up.
I thought it was 2 parts, but I think be mistaken.
I think you're right. Alyssa. I think it was 2 parts. But if you were up for it, I'd be up to, you know, if you were up for watching it and seeing what you thought about it. There's a lot of stuff he cut out, like, you know, he cuts out. Alyssa and I always joke it's the epic level adventure. With the with Galadriel and Gandalf and Saruman. It's like he cuts out a lot of that. He cuts out, like, because I think what he actually does, if I'm not mistaken, he's actually trying to keep it as much as he can as close to the book.
Okay. I was gonna say, yeah.
And so, like I think there's, like, one scene with Radagast, and it's, like, very, very brief. You know, and it doesn't explain who he is, and it's kind of like, well, yeah, because in the books, he's not really explained. You know, he kind of shows up and he's gone, and you're like, well, who the hell was that?
Right.
And Gandalf was like, yeah, let's not worry about him. You know, and it's kind of the same. It's kind of the same thing in the movie, in his cut of the film as well. And so, if you're up for it, you know.
Yeah, I'll give it a shot.
Cool.
But I interrupted there on that little side journey. Favorite films.
Rattling off more.
Oh, I'm rattling off more?
It might be an unfair question.
I mean, if it comes on, I mean, there's certain things I can just watch if it comes on. I mean, I can still watch The Godfather, despite what I was saying earlier in the show. You know, I still enjoy it. You know, Shawshank, I still watch it when it comes on. I'm not so big a fan of the first, like, half of the movie. I just like the second half where he, you know, screws over the warden and gets out of Shawshank. The whole thing with the whole guys bullying him, and, you know, that part, I'm like, I don't really need to see that part. But you know, that I'm trying to think in terms of classics. One of the classics that I really love is Sunset Boulevard. Really great film noir. Casablanca, like I said earlier, another one. You know, those are kind of my biggies. I'm trying to think of something from the 60s, but I really can't. So, you know, and again, I'm not a huge, like we talked about before, I'm not a huge MCU, DCU person. I like the movies. I really love Dark Knight. I think Dark Knight is amazing. You know, and Batman Begins is pretty good. It's not as good as Dark Knight, in my opinion, but so those would be good for me.
Nice.
What about you, Jack?
Well, you know, I mean, I'll see if I can actually find it real quick. But I mean, I always see the Star Warses, even the bad ones. I can always find elements of them that I like. You know, yes, even the prequels and the god awful, like Phantom Menace. I can pull scenes or concepts out of there that I enjoy. But like with, you know, Casablanca, like, you know, like Tom said, as I mentioned earlier during the stream, Lawrence of Arabia, with Seven Samurai, I'm a big fan of. Actually, all of, you know, almost every Kurosawa film that I've seen, I would recommend. You know, with the exception being, oddly enough, the one that inspired Star Wars, with The Hidden Fortress. I actually just watched that for the first time recently, and I was kind of like, wow, this actually is not as good as I was kind of hoping it would be. You know, other films from, like, when I considered my top 10 back in the day would be, you know, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, the French romantic comedy Amélie is up there for me. Yeah, that one I hold pretty high up. Logan, again, that's you know, the it's not MCU, but it's like it's like, you know, nerdy franchising. Blade Runner 2049 actually is really high up there. I actually like 2049 it's one of those things. I love Blade Runner. Before 2049 came out, I would have put it like, if someone was like, give me your top 10, sci-fi films, it'd probably be in the top 10. But 2049 for me now is actually, I enjoy it more than the original, which is so shocking to me. I would consider that up in there. Predestination, time travel film. Live, Die, Repeat, Edge of Tomorrow. That one's another one. Donnie Darko. I'm kind of all over the place with my movies. Lord of the Rings are good as well too. Like I love that you have those up there so high. And it's funny. I love the fact that you've seen Fellowship too. That's like your number one. Now, is that actually your favorite of the three, or is that just the one you've just seen the most out of the three?
It's my favorite of the three.
Okay, it's funny. For me as well. It's actually out of the three, it's my favorite, and it's funny. So many people put it like most people that seem to put it as like the third. Like they're like, it's too much exposition. It's all just build up, and it's all this. It's the beginning of the journey. It's not that exciting. And I'm like, that's like the best part. What are you talking about? It's the beginning of the journey, and then they break apart at the end. They fracture. Yeah. Alyssa, what about you? I know you're the one who asked the question.
I'm not even going to get into it. No, with you two movie guys going on Reddit, no.
Well, like,
no.
If you were like a half a dozen movies that if someone was
I'm not
suggest
doing
something
it.
to watch.
No, I've given zero thought to the movies that would be in the top of my list. Zero. No, I'm not doing it. I'll think about it, and the next time we have Tom on, then maybe I'll be prepared to talk about it.
Okay.
Until then, we have been going a little bit longer. We're coming up to the 2-hour mark. And I've kind of got all of my settlements in place. So tomorrow I'm going to be back. It'll be just a little on me this time, but we're going to be drawing all of the rivers on this, and then probably starting to get our trees on here too. And this is going to be one goddamn sexy map. But until then, I do want to thank Tom for coming onto the channel. Tom, just to talk movies with Jack, it was great, man. I really appreciate having you on.
Thanks. It was a pleasure. I enjoy it.
Yeah, it's good to catch up because we haven't spoken in like 14 months.
I know.
Right.
So with that said, everyone, I love you all. Thanks for hanging out. We had a whole slew of people on here tonight, so thank you. I'm back tomorrow, 5:30 Pacific Standard Time. Going to continue working on Salt Wolves of the Whale Road for Gallant Knight Games. And watch for the future, because we are going to have Alan Barr from Gallant Knight on the channel while we're working on his map. So that will be a nice future episode. Until then, I'm going to see you all on the flip side. Say goodnight to Jack and Tom.
Night, everybody.
Thanks.